History is a set of lies agreed upon. Napoleon Bonaparte. Good afternoon. So this is my second video of the day, and it might be my last video of the day, but we'll see. My previous video, I am sorry, I realized that I messed up on the quote of the day. The quote of the day showed George Santayana's quote, but then my voiceover for it, I didn't replace it like I should have. So I'll probably save that quote another day. It's still a pretty good quote. Okay, let's move on. And before I move on, let me talk about the mile again. And the mile, I would say, isn't necessarily problem. Hold on, let me use this one. Okay, that's better. I mean, the mile is the problem, not the sacred geometry. Most likely the numbers, like I said, the ratios, they're all going to be correct. The units of measurement in the history that's written about it, that's probably lies. I mean, when you look at Marty Leeds' works, especially as it relates to the body and things like that, it's easily seen as that the mile, as in 5,280 feet, the number 528, 5,280, it's been there for a long while. And one thing I missed is the statute mile, which is equivalent of 8 furlongs in 1593. I forgot to mention that, but that's also something. But then again, when you look into the statute mile, excuse me, that's still something that's in the 16th century, not necessarily from way back when a lot of the geometry and sacred geometry were comprised back in the BC era. And I'm not talking about the really like 29 BC. I'm talking around 200 BC, 500 BC, that era. Okay, so now let's look at the meter, because I have always thought that the meter was around for a much longer time than the miles in the feet and things like that, but I could have been wrong. Of course, this is all from the very easily accessible Google search results. Most people, we're going to look in here. Most people will look in the top search results. Most people will look at the Wikipedia. So one of the things I do look at is the meter. Either you spell it the METR way, American way, or the METRE. Now here's where it gets weird. So if we take it by the meter, we'll also go to the standard meter, which is the second result. And then we'll go to physics.nist.gov. That way we've got 3 sources, okay? So in the Wikipedia, the meter, from French name meter, I guess meter. Sorry, I don't know how to speak French. Is the base unit of length in the International System of Units. The SI unit symbol is m. The meter is defined as the length of the path traveled by light in vacuum, 1 over 299,790, or 299 million. I'm sorry, 792,458 of a second. The meter was originally defined in 1793 as 1/10,000,000th of the distance from the equator to the North Pole. As a result of the Earth's circumference is approximately 40,000 kilometers today. And again, that is assuming that Earth is a sphere. Back in Eratosthenes' day, and how would they know that is the distance from the equator to the North Pole. And this doesn't give you exactly how they meant. Well, you might see later. Again, all right. So let's say 1793, they're talking about the North Pole. Well, then I looked at the North Pole and was like, when was the North Pole first explored? It's like, why would they mention North Pole? Why didn't they just take South Pole or any other point in saying that that was just a meter? Why did it have to specify its origin from the North Pole? And then when we get to it, as far as when was the North Pole first explored, Robert Peary is accredited as having reached the North Pole. And here we go. It says, Robert Peary, American explorer. The conquest of the North Pole was for many years credited to U.S. Navy engineer Robert Peary, who claimed to have reached the pole, on 6th of April 1909, accompanied by Matthew Henson and 4 Inuit men, Uta, Siglo, Igingwa, and Ukwa. And that's also in the Wikipedia. Who discovered the North Pole? It looks like the Smithsonian says it as well. And it goes, but did Frederick Cook get there first? Who knows? Maybe we'll look at it. And then the second one is beyondpenguins.ehe.osu.edu. So let's look at here. The Smithsonian, Frederick Cook. Okay. Where is Frederick Cook? Oh, by a week. So either way, it's still 1908 or 1909. Right here, a week earlier. And a full year before Perry. Okay, so we can easily see that 1908, that's the earliest account that history will say North Pole was explored or claimed to have been reached. Yet the meter, as in Wikipedia, claims that it's 1/10,000th of the distance from the equator to the North Pole. The equator to the North Pole. They can send the equator to the South Pole. They could have said some other type of distance, but they had to use that as the definition of the meter. And then who else? Okay, so who got there first? The North Pole controversies. Okay, this goes back with Cook and Robert Peary. But either way, it's only a year's difference, remember. Okay, so let's go back. What other definitions in the Wikipedia does it say? In 1799, it was redefined in terms of a prototype meter bar. The actual bar used was changed in 1889, so they changed it again. In 1960, the meter was redefined in terms of a certain number of wavelengths in a certain emission line of krypton 86. In 1983, the current definition was adopted, which is the length of the path traveled by light in a vacuum in 1 over 299,792,458 of a second. And again, out of all these definitions of how the meter was defined has changed throughout history a certain number of times, yet the actual meter length hadn't changed. They didn't say that at all, that the meter length was changed. Now, if we go to the standard meter, this is surveyhistory.org. This was the second result in Google search. The French originated the meter in the 1790s as 1/10,000,000th of the distance from the equator to the North Pole along a meridian through Paris. Along a meridian, so they had to go through Paris from the North Pole to the equator. It is realistically represented by the distance between 2 marks of an iron bar kept in Paris. The International Bureau of Weights and Measures created in 1879 upgraded a bar to one made of 90% platinum and 10% iridium alloy. In 1960, the meter is redefined as 1,650,763.73 wavelengths of orange red light in a vacuum produced by burning the element krypton 86. More recently, 1984, the Geneva Convention on Weights and Measures has defined the meter as distance light travels in a vacuum in 1 and 299,792,458 seconds, with time measured by a cesium-133 atomic clock, which emits pulses of radiation at very rapid regular intervals. None of the definitions change the length of the meter, like I was saying before, but merely allow this length to be duplicated more precisely. Our English foot has not been so constant. That goes back to the miles. The U.S. Congress legalized the use of the metric system in 1866 on the basis that 1 meter is exactly equal to 39.37 inches. Interesting. In 1959, a number of English-speaking countries agreed that an inch is exactly equal to 2.54 centimeters, so that the international foot is exactly equal to 0.3048 meters. And again, 1959, as we discussed in my earlier video, that was when the same international agreement was set upon the standardization of the mile, which was to be 5,280 feet. Anyways, the United States retained the old 1866 equivalency and called it the U.S. survey foot, so that 1 U.S. survey foot equals 1.000002 international feet. So that's standard meter. And the second results of Google search results from surveyhistory.org. Now the third result from Google search results goes to the actual NIST, physics.nist.gov. So historical context of the SI. Unit of length meter. The origins of the meter go back, and I'll increase it to at least the 18th century. So at least the 18th century. Oh my goodness. Everything was hectic as far as measurements before, huh? At that time, there were two competing approaches to the definition of a standard unit of length. Some suggested defining the meter as the length of a pendulum having a half period of 1 second. Others suggested defining the meter as 1/10 millionth of the length of the Earth's meridian along a quadrant, 1/4 the circumference of the Earth. Globe Earth model, mind you. In 1791, soon after the French Revolution, the French Academy of Sciences chose the meridian definition over the pendulum definition because the force of gravity is here again, varies slightly over the surface of the Earth, affecting the period of the pendulum. Okay, so thus the meter was intended to equal 10 to the -7th or 1/10 millionth of the length of the meridian through Paris, from pole to the equator. However, the first prototype was short by 0.2 millimeters because researchers miscalculated the flattening of the Earth due to its rotation. Oh, there's rotation again. And so they're just off by 0.2 millimeters. Did they? How? Where was this measure? So we know that it's just calculations. They didn't measure. They didn't get the longest rope that was pre-measured, and then they went ahead and did that. No, it's all through calculations. Still, this length became the standard, and it goes through most of everything else. But we still have the same problem, like it was mentioned. None of the definitions changed the length of the meter, but merely allowed this length to be duplicated more precisely. And therefore, yes, they chose the North Pole of a globe Earth model of the distance from the North Pole, and they don't specify the magnetic North Pole. They don't specify the true North Pole, which true North Pole isn't the true North Pole, which is, oh man, we could go at this incredibly crazy. True North Pole is the geographic North Pole and the globe Earth model, and the magnetic North Pole is the magnetic North Pole, where your compass will always point to that north. But anyway, they don't specify which North Pole, whether it's the true North Pole or the actual true North Pole. Oh my goodness, which is the magnetic North Pole. And then they made sure that it went through Paris. They made sure of that, the French, and that it ended up at the equator. And so that was back in 1793. You can see it in 1791 as well, 1793, from 3 different sources, all from YouTube or Google search results. But then again, how would they know where? Well, first, which North Pole? And that I have to do this. True North Pole versus magnetic North Pole. And again, this is Google search results, geographic North Pole. This is what you're going to see. And I'll go ahead and pick the 3. First, GIS, geography.com, and I guess North Magnetic Pole. Which is funny. Because the compass never points anywhere else but to the magnetic North Pole. But you have to do a little bit of math to end up finding the true, quotes, and true geographic North Pole. And so you can figure this out on your own. Just look at it. And this map even shows you where geographic North Pole, magnetic North Pole, and the globe sphere model of the Earth, that the magnetic North Pole keeps moving, that the North and South Pole will end up like switching and all this other crazy jazz. And then if you go to North Magnetic Pole, you'll see in the Wikipedia that there's not just a geographic North Pole, there's not just the North Geomagnetic Pole, but there's also the North Magnetic Pole. So there's 3. So they call the geographic North Pole the true North Pole, even though the compass never points there. You got the North Magnetic Pole, where the compass always points north, or is that the geomagnetic north? We're gonna see, because it's confusing. Why do they need 3 North Poles for? Even in in a flat Earth, you only have 1 North Pole. It's where the compass points. That's your North Pole. That's the flat. If there is a model for flat Earth, and if it's flat, the center of something flat, you can reach there. The center of something's a sphere, you can't reach there. You can't go to the center of a globe Earth. You can go to the center of a flat Earth. You can easily find that. You just go to the center, and we know where that center goes. Well, the Polaris points there. Our compasses point there. Ever notice that the Polaris and the North Pole, the compass, they never point to anywhere but the magnetic North Pole? All right, let's look at the... Okay, so they say the North Magnetic Pole is the wandering point on the surface of Earth's north hemisphere. And let's see what the North Geomagnetic Pole is. Okay, is this the one with the compass? And they say no, it doesn't. Okay. See, that's where they call magnetic north. Even here, they don't even specify the magnetic North Pole. The magnetic north here and here points to the North Geomagnetic Pole, not the North Magnetic Pole. So things, they can't even get their own freaking history right. Their own geography correct. You can't, I mean... Do we need three North Poles? Do we have 3 South Poles? Even the globe Earth model, do we have 3 South Poles? No, but we've got 3 North Poles. Anyone even wonder about that? Am I always the one just wondering about these things? Is there a South Magnetic Pole? Is there a South Geographic South Pole? Is there a South Geomagnetic Pole? I don't think so. All of that's attributed to the North Pole. How come they have all this weird stuff occurring for the North Pole, but they don't have the same stuff occurring for the South Pole? They say South Pole, and that's it. That's all you need to know. North Pole, whew, yeah, we had to divide the North Pole into 3 different distinctions. Not only that, North Pole hasn't been explored except the first one who they attribute exploring the North Pole, either Frederick Cook or Robert Peary, back in either 1908 or 1909. Yet, they went ahead and stated that the meter, the origin of the meter, excuse me, was defined back in 1793 from the distance of the equator to the North Pole, from the equator to the North Pole through Paris. That was the definition of the meter. Yet in 1793, they wouldn't have discovered or explored the North Pole after 200 years since they defined the meter as being the distance from the equator to the North Pole. And then which North Pole are they saying? I think they're saying it's going to be the geographic North Pole, or what they call the quote unquote true North Pole. So again, I would say history again is lying, or whoever's writing the history and presenting the history that we're being taught in the schools, we're being shown here, we're being shown pretty much everywhere, at least to the people at large, the large population. But again, large populations aren't going to listen to me, they're not going to watch me, they're not even going to pose the question, but that's okay. It's not for them. My videos apparently aren't for the masses, it's for those who are starting to peel the layers of their onion selves. I wouldn't call ourselves onions, but you know what I mean. I'm using would it be an allegory? Can you make an allegory of vegetables? I always thought allegories were more for animals. Or we could just say analogy. All right, so that's it. This is my last video of today. Most likely, I may do one tonight. Who knows? Hopefully, I can stop coughing. I hate it when I'm coughing during these videos. But thank you very much for watching this, and keep questioning, keep wondering, keep thinking, keep imagining, keep finding the truth.